Welcome to JagaVision, episode 2, as we continue to explore different tea flavors, different thoughts and opinions on what's going on right now, the COVID-19 pandemic amongst some of our client base, in terms of how they're dealing with it as business owners, etc. We're going to be drinking some Sencha Zairaishu today. We'll be working with Jeremy Ho is going to be joining us in a little bit. We're also going to have Sister Speak joining us, and should be lots of fun. Let me turn down that music. Doing everything myself, obviously, because this is an interesting moment in time where we need to keep those 2-meter distances. Essentially, what we're going to be working on, or what we're going to be enjoying today, it's going to be a tea from Mandokoro. You can get it on our webpage if you're so inclined. It's called the Sencha Zairaishu by Kawakami. Before I do that, though, I figured I would try a sample of the tea that's just come in. We received a number of samples from Darjeeling for 2020. Let me see. Again. So, really famous estate, I think I'll work with. If any of you out there are Darjeeling fans, working with the Margaret's Hope Estate. Don't have a lot of data on this tea. I never do. It can be a little bit problematic trying to get any sort of cultivar information or a more detailed information out of these bigger estates. I haven't had a selection from Margaret's Hope that's been extremely inspiring in a long time. But I always have hope. No pun intended. So these are the leaves. If you can see them very well, but and in terms of the visual on these, a little bit too much stem, in my opinion. Oh, it's not actually that bad. This is an FTGFOP, so finest tippy golden flowery orange pico. That's all really the India Tea Board recognizes as top quality tea. When they get a rank above that, they're going to have an SFTGFOP. The Indian tea community seems to really enjoy using a lot of initials when discussing their selections. Gonna preheat my vessel. Going to drop 3 grams of tea leaves into the teapot. Have you ever wondered what to use an AirPress funnel for? This is my suggestion. And then we're going to put in 180 grams of 80 degrees centigrade water. Just gonna wait for that to heat up. If you're making a first flush Darjeeling, this is what I recommend. They're generally fairly lightly withered, so you're often going to see a little bit more green than you might in a second flush. This one in particular, you can't really see, but doesn't seem to have a lot of green. It looks a little bit more withered than any first flush Darjeelings that I've had. It smells a little maltier. There's been many in the industry that lament the fact that our first flush Darjeeling origin crimson teas are, or what we call black tea in North America, are generally a lot lighter oxidation than they were traditionally. This looks like it perhaps has been taken to a more traditional withering percentage. I'm at 80 degrees now. Press go the moment the water hits the tea. And bring it to 180 grams. If you're making tea at home, to achieve 80 degrees centigrade, just think that every time you put hot water into a room temperature vessel, it's going to drop 10 degrees C. So a good rule of thumb when making a tea like this, where you do require 80 degrees centigrade water, is you can essentially boil up some water, and then you can transfer it into your teapot for preheating it, and then use that water, put that water into a decanter. If you don't have scale at home, you could use a measuring cup. If that's the case, then put the boiling water into the measuring cup to preheat it, then put that into, say, a drinking cup, and then you can know that you're working with an 80 degrees centigrade water because you've done the two transfers, 100 minus 10 minus 10. And then for the tea leaves, without a scale, you're kind of going to be hard pressed. But you should just get yourself a scale. It's going to make your life a lot easier. I used to suggest different amounts of teaspoons, etc., but volume just doesn't really cut it when you have that tiny amount of botanical that you're going to be working with. So just really make a point of going out and maybe, obviously you shouldn't be shopping too much right now in this environment, so maybe order online. AWS makes a pretty decent scale. You can get them from adalcoffee.com and not be paying an arm and a leg for them. And you should be in a good place. We're going to be joined pretty soon here. Just going to finish drinking this tea, and then I'm going to see how these guys are doing. So just give me a moment while I just double check that they're ready to rock and roll when we are. Okay. Confirming. That's confirmed. And then one more. I sent to your email. Okay, let's see how this goes. Okay, and we're at 7 more seconds left, and then we'll be ready to taste this. So visually, again, quite nice. The visual on it for the liquid, kind of a gentle amber. Want to get out that golden drop. See the color. Smells pretty good. Kind of a grape and malt. Something in there can't really describe very well, but smells pleasant enough. 2020 harvest. Margaret's Hope Estate Darjeeling. That's really bland. What I should normally, because I'm seeing this lighter oxidation, I cut my first flush Darjeelings with a lower water temperature. I think I'm gonna go back to this one, and I'm gonna try it with a hotter water temperature, like I would a second flush Darjeeling, just because the oxidation level looks a lot deeper than I'm used to with modern era first flush Darjeeling. So anyways, that was not a very good, or not very interesting. It was just bland. I don't think that's the tea's fault, though. I think that was my brewing parameters. So back to the drawing board on that one. Okay, I'm going to try and get everybody on the show. So give me a moment. I'll be right back.
Hey, good. Oh, nice. Hmm. Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Uh, not without me having to droop down. I can hold it up and stuff like that. So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I think it depends on who's talking. No, with Zoom, you can change the view. Yeah. If you change speaker view, if you go to your top right, you can go speaker view. You can go to, I think gallery view.
Yeah.
So, and
It's
then it
it's a great thing
equalizes
with the browser. Well, we're live now with everybody. So hello world. This is Jeremy Ho with Monogram Coffee. Monogram has been
Hi.
serving our coffees our teas for quite some time, and we're excited to have Jeremy on the show. He's one of the three owners. Jeremy, how long? Can you tell me a little bit about Monogram?
Yeah. So we started in the end of 2014. So Ben, Justin, and myself, we're the three founders of Monogram. We are a coffee company that roasts coffee as well as retails coffee in 3 cafes in Calgary. So we source, roast, and brew all of our coffees in a really similar mindset to I think what Jared does at JagaSilk. Just really intentionally committing to amazing partners and great producers, developing relationship with them, and roasting our coffees in a way that I think you can taste the varieties and the processing rather than the roast. So yeah, we do wholesale and retail. So.
Which is, we've been excited to work with you from day one since you guys have opened, and we've found definitely a lot of similarities in terms of parallels in thinking, etc. And it's always exciting to discuss different teas, but of course also really whenever we get a chance to drink your coffees, we're always really enjoying them. Jeremy, you yourself, you at one point you competed and won the Barista Championship here in Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was ages ago, though.
Ages ago, yeah. Well, it's kind of an interesting thing for the viewers. They wouldn't necessarily know that, so it's kind of nice to bring it up. And that experience, and then also, how long have you been in coffee and enjoying coffees and teas? Like in terms of being in the industry?
Yeah, for the industry, I've been working in specialty coffee since 2006. So I guess that's like 14 years. So yeah, seen the industry grow and evolve quite a lot.
Nice. Okay. So looks like people can't hear us. So I'm just going to quickly turn off my music entirely. Just give me a second, okay? Pardon my my tech lack of savviness here. There we go. Okay, so music has been turned off. Hopefully, everybody can hear a little bit better now. I think we're going to be better this way. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so we've had. So can you answer that last question there just one more time? Looks like we couldn't quite hear you there. Was how long you've been in the industry?
Yeah, so I've been working in specialty coffee since 2006. So that's like 14 years, I think.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we just have a little 1 year on you. We started in 2005, so we've been at it for a very similar amount of time. So it should be an interesting session. You do have the tea we sent you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it right here.
Excellent. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can't get Sherri in the.
Hello.
Oh, there she is. Oh, okay, lovely. Okay.
Hi.
So Sherri with Sister Speak, we have her,
Yes.
and we have Monogram Coffee involved in the cutting today. So Jeremy Ho.
Hi, Sherri.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Nice to finally meet.
Meet
Yes,
Sherri.
Monogram.
So Jeremy, Sister Speak has been doing their live performance at noon every Thursday, and then we've been following with our show right afterwards. So She's been
Very cool.
almost embarrassingly active with promoting our teas on her live stream. It's been pretty hilarious. But yeah.
Have you written a song about tea?
It's gonna be coming soon. I have to work on that.
It's on its way. It's on its way. Yeah, Sherri, I warn you, Jeremy's a little bit too much fun. He's a little bit of a troublemaker. So just a heads
No,
up.
I'm not.
Well, in honor of being a troublemaker, I'm having a little bit of soup as well while we're doing this.
Okay, all right.
Oh, that's rebellious.
Very rebellious. Okay, so one more time, guys. For the viewers out there, we're going to be drinking this Sencha Zairaishu. Jeremy, Sherri Ann. You guys have... let's start brewing so we can start talking about the tea.
Yes.
Do you have... you want to open it up and give it a good smell?
Okay.
And what struck me for this particular selection is that it actually doesn't smell like a traditional high-grade Japanese sencha should.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
So when you it's not a very striking aromatic. It actually smells a little bit almost dusty, right? And so the first time that I had this tea, I was kind of I was actually unimpressed because I made it with traditional brew settings, and when I made it for the farmer, she told me that it tastes like horse piss, and I needed to remake it. So, so it was.
And that sold you.
Yeah, that's what she said. She's like, "No, you can't. If you serve my tea this way, I don't want to sell it to you." Is what she said. So it was. So we had to make it a whole bunch of times with
I
her.
like that.
And find a way to make it taste like how she made it. And when she made it, it tastes amazing. Like suddenly we're tasting umami. Suddenly we're tasting all these beautiful complex flavors. There's bitterness, there's astringency, but there's also beautiful sweetness. And it just keeps on going. Like the length of time that it hangs out on your tongue and just does interesting things is fascinating. What makes it fascinating is that, as I was explaining a little bit on the Sister Speak show, is that this is a seed-grown cultivar. So this is not clonal stock. So we're not looking at normally what would happen is if you're drinking your standard sencha, you're going to be looking for those like a beautiful sencha. You want that really rich umami note. You want a particular kind of grassiness to it, but you also want some interesting bitters. You are going to find a little bit of that, but you're definitely not going to taste something like the yabukita. Like yabukita is a really common cultivar in Japan, and it's been propagated throughout the country. They say something like 75% of production in Japan involves the yabukita cultivar in some way or another.
Wow.
But traditionally, farmers were growing from seed, and this is from a village that's been producing tea for at least 500 years, if not longer. And they produced tea for the wife of one of the unifiers of Japan. I don't know if you guys know your Japanese history at all, but Hideyoshi.
I don't at all.
Yeah. So Hideyoshi had his wife's name was Kitano Mandokoro, and so the village of Mandokoro actually takes their name from the wife of Hideyoshi, who really loved this tea. And so he's famous in Japanese history for being one of the unifiers of Japan in the 1500s. So, if you want to weigh out 6 grams of tea on a scale, that would be awesome. You can share. I would weigh it in something else other than your jar, but if you're going to weigh it into the jar, then maybe pour the boiling water into the jar first. And Jeremy, is your water fresh boiled?
Yes, it's boiled, but I also can pour it into here and then pour it into the jar.
Because what we're going to do, it's just to put it in perspective, is I have a temperature variable kettle, and you guys are going to be working with boiling water. So most of the viewers will also not have a temperature variable kettle. So I want to make it accessible for everybody who's watching. Like to achieve 70 degrees centigrade is not really that difficult if you work with the vessel transfer system. So if you just weigh out 180 grams into whatever you're going to be brewing with, right? That's going to drop it to 90. If you're working with fresh boiled water. If it's off the boil for a little bit, like since we started talking, it's probably dropped around 10 degrees.
I'll put mine on the boil.
Okay. And then if you then drop it another time, that drops it to 80, and another time we'll drop it to 70. So you just need 3 vessel transfers to achieve the temperature that we're going for. Okay?
Okay, so I'm going to put boiling water. Mine's boiling. I have 3 here.
Okay. Awesome.
So I'm going to... I have some... Can I weigh it in this?
Yeah, as long as it's dry.
Yes. Okay. And then I have 3 different vessels after that.
Okay, awesome.
Can you see it?
1 second.
Just gonna take a photo of this tea. So beautiful.
So pretty. It smells so nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna tire my scale.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
Excellent.
Jared has taught you well.
Yes, I just learned last week.
Awesome. Okay. Scales have been tared. We're ready to
Yeah.
ready to
Yes,
rock.
sure.
My
out?
water's
Okay.
boiling.
Excellent. Water's boiling. Okay. So what are we
I'll do
brewing
the-
over at?
I'll do the triple.
At Jeremy's space. What are we using? We're using what brewing vessel?
Just a simple glass kettle,
Okay.
or just a really simple. And then here's actually a really cool cup. It's a traditional Ethiopian coffee cup, actually. So I just brought this back from our sourcing trip in Ethiopia a couple months ago.
Nice.
So they serve buna in there.
That's
My scale, Akaya, it's a really great brewing scale, that same one that Jared probably using. Yeah. So this is so this one is the original Kickstarter edition.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit sexier.
And
than
then my
mine.
my transfer vessels are my monogram cups. So,
I use those for when we go camping. Love them.
yeah, and then I'll drink out of the last one. So
And they have a
Ooh,
nice
I wanna
little
get one of those.
message on the inside. Jared, what are you saying? Sister speak?
I want to get one of those cups.
Yeah, they're pretty rad. So what are you using? Sharon, Sister Speak?
So I have this scale right here, this little baby one.
Right? Yeah, I brought that home a long time ago.
Yeah, and then I have this cup. This I think is this from you or is it from a? I got a tea set somewhere on sale.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I can't actually.
that's nice.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Isn't it nice?
Okay. So yeah,
And
Or
then I
matcha,
have
right?
yeah, so I can do that. And then I have this jar I got from JagaVision.
okay.
And I also have this teapot, this little baby one.
Oh, awesome! A nice little cue soup. Okay. All right. So
And then I also have this.
So
so I
that,
have-
That's I like that cup.
it is beautiful.
Oh, you like this one?
Yeah.
Little
when,
brown one.
when you look inside the kyusu, is there a net inside that's going to filter the leaves from getting out of the kyusu? Can you open up?
I have this as well.
Oh, open up the little teapot. There probably is. Most Japanese little teapots like that have a filter.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't? Okay. All right. Well, you know
I
what?
have to order one for me.
It's better to not be brewing with metal in with the liquid anyways, as it does add sometimes a little bit of unintended acidity. So yeah,
Yeah, I
brewing
have
in
like a
ceramic,
teaspoon.
brewing in glass, these are your ideal brewing vessels. And then when you're done, extraction pouring through a sieve. Okay. All right. I think we're ready to rock then. So for my part, I'm going to be brewing in a kyusu as well. So it's gonna. One of these guys is a tokonomiyaki, and as you can see on the inside, can you guys see? Okay,
Cool.
there's a filter. So that's not as ideal, but I just love the visual on this teapot. So I'm a sucker for the aesthetics on it. But what I have noticed is that the clay seems to add something to the flavor a little bit too, which is nice. If you look inside, it's an unfinished clay. So this isn't something that I can really use for food service, but I can use it for myself. Some tea enthusiasts will argue that actually the type of clay or where you got the clay from is going to affect the end flavor of the tea that you're working with. So they'll actually dedicate different teapots to different teas so that they can achieve different flavors that they're going for, as it kind of augments or adds to the flavors of the tea that you're working with. Okay, so we are going to drop our tea leaves into our teapots. And we are going to, looks like I lost you guys. Give me a second here.
Garage sale?
Oh, there we are.
I
Okay.
couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I think there's something about like the stone ceramics, like handmade ceramics, that is like synonymous to both coffee and tea. Like I think that's a huge part of the drinking culture, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm always really interested in the way people like make their wares, but also what wares people have, because it tells a lot about the person, I think. So
I wish there was a way to find out more about this one.
mm-hmm.
The whole tea set. Oh, actually, the tea set has a website on it. I'm gonna actually try and call them or like email them.
It's interesting to find out for sure. Okay. So, but it does. I think that that you can achieve different flavors depending on what you're brewing with. And I just, for those who are watching, just make sure that you have a vessel that is large enough that the tea leaves can do something called jumping, or the agony of the leaves, where they spin with convection currents to properly extract flavor. You can just work with a wide mouth mason jar is fine. And then if you're going to pour from that through a sieve into your drinking cup, that's a totally amazing way to make your tea. You don't need to go all out. If you are going to use a teapot, most teapots though have too long of drop time, so try to brew in something else and then use your teapot as a decanter. All right, so you guys have cooled your water to the correct temperature? Do you want to?
Now I will.
Okay, sorry, I kept blabbering on, but
So I should cool it now?
yeah. So get your
I'll probably
water.
just do 2 transfers then.
Sure. Yeah, I
'Cause
did
it's
talk
been-
a little bit longer than planned.
Yeah, come on, Jared. Just kidding.
One. Oh,
I'm weighing out my my water to 180.
Okay, awesome.
I'll do 2 transfers. So I'm going to transfer here.
Excellent.
So that should be put my tea in.
2. Okay.
Can't really see where I should be in this. Go right there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes, which is, or 3 minutes and 45 seconds.
Oh, that's long.
Which is an extremely long time for a Japanese sencha. I'm going to pour, and the moment that the water touches the tea, I press go on the timer.
Okay.
Hope we're all washing our hands for 20 seconds at least. That was my COVID-19 joke. Okay. All right. It's actually quite serious. All right. We have the tea brewing away.
Yeah, it looks very beautiful.
So while it's brewing, I encourage you to just open it up. Just give it a smell. Again, because this is grown from seed stock, it's going to have a really different aromatic than anything you'll have ever experienced with a Japanese green. And I think once
Yeah, you know it.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Gary.
No, just when leaves get wet, I think that's when you start to unlock some more interesting aromatics that were perhaps lacking before we got to this point. Right?
The smell actually kind of reminds me of some of those really nice oolongs that you have. Like there's a really it is a bit floral.
Yeah, it's surprising,
like,
hey?
almost
once you get it
milky,
wet, it's
like
okay.
yeah.
Because I went into this tea the first time I had it. I was all excited because of the story, and then when I drank it, I was not excited about it. But then when I adjusted brewing parameters, working with the farmer over the last couple of years now, but last May we actually, you and I, my wife and I, we actually harvested these tea leaves together. Hey, so these are actually handpicked by us last May, and then processed into a tea. And because Mandokoro focuses on a seed stalk. You get the sugars go really down deep into the roots of the tea leaves in the wintertime. And in the wintertime, Mandokoro gets about 2 meters of snow. And the snow will essentially flatten the tea plants. And you get this really unusual situation where after the snow melts, they essentially spring back up, and they prepare themselves to be harvested a little bit later into the late spring, early summer. So if you try to plant Yabukita in Mandokoro and that kind of snowfall happened, you just lose your plants, like straight up. Like they would just get crushed and they would not survive. And they have tried to grow Yabukita in Mandokoro before, and it just didn't work. So they've just come to realize that what they have is a very special growing environment. It's a fairly high mountain, surrounded by trees. They've been growing there for such a long time. What's also interesting is after the farmers will talk about how the flavor rides the leaf. And they'll say that once the flavor rides the leaf, then the leaves are ready for harvest. But that when the teas, when the cultivars get too old, generally if it's clonal stock at 35 or 40 years old, they stop producing the volatile oils that we all really enjoy when we're drinking our teas. And they're only ready to harvest after about 10 years. But with the seed stock, about every 50 years, they cut it right down to the roots. They don't actually pull it out or anything, but they cut it really low, and then they let regrow, and then it's ready for a good, interesting flavor dynamic. About 7 years. 7 years.
Okay, gotta do my tea.
Let's do it. So that's what's going on with mine. Again.
Oh, I see.
I like
Put it into that.
I like to get that last golden drop. And if I'm pouring through a sieve, I would do a
Golden drop.
like one of those.
Get the last few drops.
Yeah.
This is a really nice color.
It's nice, eh? It's kind of a yellow green.
Mm-hmm.
You put your nose in there and you get a sense of that Maillard reaction, that cooked sugar smell. Right? There's kind of like a
Oh, way sweeter than what I usually make it.
Okay. Yeah, see, it's interesting to make it this way. It's just such a weird way to make sencha. Because again, normally when you're making a sencha, you should be working with this temperature, 70 degrees. But your brewing time, and also the same amount of leaf to water ratio, but your brew time is about 1 minute. So to have that go to 3 minutes and 45 seconds is really unusual.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Wow.
Yeah, it smells like almost like a. Yeah, just it's really rich.
Right? And I get that buttery note. There's kind of like, we say like a rice cucumber.
Yep. I've been making this every week. It's never tasted this good. This is amazing. Now
There you go. Awesome.
The finish is kind of like those toasted seaweed or something like that, or like sesame or
toasted sesame with almost like a gamacha.
It's so floral though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or like a jasmine.
And I love smelling the cup when I'm done that first. Like it just has that really sweet. Whenever I make
It's definitely got a.
and I'm not super enjoying it, but I smell the cup afterwards and it smells amazing, I always tell myself I must be brewing it wrong, because if it has that much beautiful aromatic potential, then I just need to switch things up a bit to find out how to unlock that in the overall flavor rather than just in the nose.
Yeah, it's really floral.
Yeah.
And it has like nice body to it. Very creamy. Like, it is like it's got intensity to it though. Like there are like some astringency to it, and almost
Yeah, I find that again when I'm drinking this tea, the initial hit, it's like, oh, that's warm, that's an interesting sort of sugary note, but then it goes like across the kind of the sides of my tongue, it gets a little bit astringent, but then normally what that would do is it would kind of get aggressive and kind of stick around. But this one, it just then goes a little bit sweet, and then a little bit bitter, and then a little bit sweet, and then a little bit bitter. And like, the more that I kind of hang out with it on my tongue, it's just such an interesting tea.
Can you vary the brew time?
Oh yeah, you can totally vary the brew time. So, when we're making a sencha normally, a normal sencha, you're gonna have 1 minute, 6 grams, 180 mils, at 70 degrees centigrade. If you're working with a tea from Kyoto, you should drop the temperature down a bit because they don't finish fire, and it's just going to be a little bit easier for it to get too astringent. But the second steep is only 5 seconds. For this particular tea, if you brew that way, it tastes like so watery and unpleasant. So 3 minutes and 45 seconds is what we found tastes really ideal. We've tried it at 3.5 minutes. I've tried it at 4 minutes. I've tried it at 5 minutes. You know, everybody's going to have their preference. This is just kind of what we put down as a really interesting and beautiful flavor. But what's interesting as well is that every subsequent infusion, like the next infusion, and we should probably make the next infusion too, is actually 4 minutes. And so again, that's really unusual because for a standard sencha, you would normally work with a 5-second second infusion if you can do it.
Should I boil water fresh again?
Probably a good idea. It's good to have a thermometer on hand because then you know exactly where you're at. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's really nice.
Boil water and then the transfers.
I also find that when I'm oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Just remarking, it's really, really floral. Like it's really interesting. Like it hits you gently, and then the floral really comes through in the mid and then finish.
I wonder what kind of flower we would call that. I don't know. Yeah.
Does it remind you of jasmine a little bit?
It does. Yeah, I was gonna say. I think it's jasmine-y. In some ways, it almost reminds me of coffee flower.
Of which?
Oh, I've never had that.
Of which?
Most people haven't. Yeah, coffee flower.
The operative word there.
Coffee flower.
Coffee flower. Okay. Yeah.
I like the tone.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. And of course, the smell of the wet leaf is like spinach, as it often is. For your next infusion, guys, if you want to prepare that 70 degrees and you want to throw it on for 4 minutes, that would be awesome. And then we can all enjoy the second infusion together too. This tea is ridiculous for how much love it has to give too in terms of infusions. Most senchas, you can take them to about 4 to 5 infusions. We've enjoyed this tea 8, 9, 10 infusions. Just gradually elongating how long we're steeping for. So again, I guess something we need to remember when we're drinking this tea is just how much we have to throw normalcy out the window. And then you can start to enjoy seed cultivars, which, Jeremy, is actually something I've always thought about various coffee selections. A lot of the time when we're selecting coffees, there seems to be a focus on that coffee tasting very good using standard brewing parameters. But I think it's so interesting to work with unusual coffees and really switch up the brewing parameters entirely and unlock and curate different flavor dynamics than you otherwise would be able to if you were just working with standard brewing parameters. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's I think that discussion is interesting because a lot of that has to do with the roast of the coffee. So the varieties have different densities. The processing influences that. It's dry different ways. And so when you roast it, you might roast it in a different profile or to a different like endpoint. And that often influences the solubility of the coffee once it's brewed. And so a lot of your brewing parameters are centered around hitting a certain percent extraction. But if the coffees are roasted with different solubilities, you might change your parameters to get to the extraction level that you want. So I would say more and more nowadays, the parameters are actually changing less, I would say.
Okay, so I've always thought that I guess if you roast to achieve good flavor with a more homogeneous set of brewing parameters, it makes sense because then you don't have the customer doesn't have to do as much sort of juggling with the variables, and it lets them have sort of a more uniform sort of preparation methodology so that they can achieve the flavors that you're hoping that they can taste from your. But I had this experience with a maduro or like an overripe coffee cherry. And when I made it, and I guess perhaps the person could have adjusted their roast profile, but man, it tasted so good at 70 degrees centigrade instead of the standard, like the 93 degrees centigrade or what have you. And I just found that so fascinating, and it just put that thought into my head. Maybe it's just, rather than it being the norm, it's just an unusual situation to face where I'm not sure if the roast could have made that coffee work with but maybe it could have. Who knows, right? I guess it really.
But I think from that one, it's probably like there are a certain set of brewing parameters that for that coffee it's optimal. And then when you start comparing across different coffees, likely the roasts are different. So you're going to have like different set of solubilities that make that coffee taste better. So like a dark roast coffee per se is you're probably not going to want as hot. You want less hot water. You're going to, because that will bring out more bitters and it'll dissolve too much and extract too much from the coffee. So like something like that, you may want to hit it with lesser or cooler temperature water and
makes sense.
That kind of a thing. So.
And I guess it also, there's so many variables at play, right? Like even the makeup of the water that you're working with, how big of a role that plays, right? Even if we try in coffee to roast for a particular brewing parameter, if the makeup of the water is different. This happens with tea as well, right? Like I'll put together these brewing parameters that I think are going to taste pretty good, but even right now, you at your home and we talked about this before going live, is when we were discussing last week, just how what you're tasting, what I'm tasting are going to be different, just because we have different amounts of dissolved solids in our water and mineral content, etc. Hard water and soft water is going to make a difference. So Sister Speak, Sherri, she's in Vernon right now. That's going to have its own set of
altitude
of makeup of the water, and that's going to bring out different attributes in a tea. And so we're going to actually be tasting different things, even though we're following a fairly similar brewing parameter, right?
How about the altitude? Does that affect it too?
Altitude, your experience of flavor. It will affect what you can, like if you tried to boil water. So I guess boiling water, I say, is 100, but it isn't at high altitude. So I should have actually took that into consideration. When you guys are making your tea, you're in a much higher elevation than me, so you probably won't need 3 vessel transfers to achieve 70 degrees. You probably just need 2 and then a quick vessel transfer, because you're closer to, what are you guys at, 97 degrees centigrade, maybe?
About 94. So yeah, I thought about that.
Because you're a star.
It's just no, it's just the water temperature really off our altitude.
Yeah, I don't know if that would affect the altitude would affect our perception of flavor. Hey, it would mostly be just the temperature of the water. Yeah.
I think there probably is a little, like, depending on your altitude, I think your perception of flavors might change. but I don't think it would be by much. I think it's more in extreme cases. I don't think we would taste a difference like comparatively from sea level to where we're at in Calgary.
Yeah.
So
Unless it was really extreme
Maybe, yeah.
cognitive
Exactly.
ability.
Couldn't quite hear you there. You want to say that again? Oh.
Is like the just like the way that your brain is interpreting flavors.
Mhm.
It seems like something more than altitude that would play a role in like how we perceive flavors. Definitely the makeup of the water, but also just what we had before we had what we're drinking. That's probably going to play an even bigger role. So like you just had soup, right? I don't know what kind of soup it is, but that will actually affect what you're tasting too. And I just had a date, like with these beautiful dates from. I'll throw this out there, Ducky dates. Everybody should look them up. But we are going to taste different things depending on what we've just consumed, for sure. And so there's talk in cupping rooms in India, for example. Speaking to one of our farms that we work with, and they talk about a movement away from having spicy food before cupping the teas that they're going to be choosing for bringing into their companies for sale, right? It plays a huge role what you've eaten before you drink your tea. But
Fattiness too. So if you're having like cream or milk or yogurt, it's gonna impact your ability to taste. Sometimes sparkling water, the acids, or carbonic acids, they'll influence your perception of acids after. So like if you sucked on a lemon and then tasted an espresso, no espresso's gonna taste acidic. It's in comparison to the lemon that you just had.
right.
Yeah.
Because it's going to impact your experience of flavor. One argument that I've heard that I think really makes a lot of sense is to try and get, again, homogeneous in how you prepare your tongue before you drink something. So carbonic acid is going to interfere with how you taste something, but perhaps having it every time before you taste something will at least give you a platform to work from. But maybe just having some water.
That's what I did. After the soup, I had some water.
And then it helps, right? Yeah, and then you don't have to deal
Yep.
with the carbon dioxide. What are your thoughts on just having some water before drinking tea, Jeremy?
Yeah,
Works, yeah?
I did.
Okay.
I had a full glass.
Excellent. Well, I guess I'm the odd one out here, guys. You guys are all preparing your pellets, and look at me. I had a date, and then I went into this. Absolute fail. Are you on your
Come on,
Steve?
Jared. Yeah.
No harm in having a date. When you're married, you gotta still go on dates with each other.
Yeah.
True.
Yes. I made a really ridiculous pun before you guys came on the air, so we're obviously related.
Oh, really?
Okay. So this second steep, what I'm tasting is a lot softer flavors. I don't have that same. I don't have that same astringency. Not that it was like super harsh before, but it almost felt like it was in danger of going a little bit too harsh before. Whereas this one,
I felt that.
I feel like it's a lot tamer. Are you guys getting that?
My second steep is a little bit stronger, actually.
Oh, really? Okay. There you go.
It's not so much stronger, it's that it lasts a little bit longer, the flavor.
The flavor. So the
But
finish. Okay, yeah, I get that.
the
I
finish
definitely
is
have a
sweet.
longer finish in this one. But I don't get that same drying out of the sides of the tongue as I did in the first infusion.
Yeah. I'm feeling it. I think maybe I made my water a little bit too hot.
Oh, that could happen, yeah. I mean, again, it makes a big difference
I did do a few.
to have a thermometer
Sure.
just so you can be really sure.
Yeah, I did do a few vessel transfers, but one of the transfers was a teapot, which you said doesn't necessarily.
Well, and also, it's probably good to point out that once you've used the vessel for transfer once, um, unless it's cold to the touch, it's not going to have the same effect on adjusting the water temperature the second for the
Right.
second steam.
Good point.
I find this I get similar levels of astringency, like Sherri, but it's more delicate and floral. There's a little less like umami than the first one, but the florals are like super pronounced.
Interesting.
Really nice.
Yeah, I wonder why we're. I wonder why I'm not tasting the same increased astringency that you guys are, or strength of flavor, I guess, as Sherri was saying. On a quick note, Jared Barani, who used to be a brewer, is watching right now, and he mentions that the boiling point of water drops about 2 degrees Fahrenheit per 1,000 foot gain. So, kind of interesting if we're doing our math.
Good to know.
So, there you go. Now,
It's still very much like a good warm feeling inside, you know?
yeah.
No, it's like a familiar comfort feeling. Maybe it reminds me of. It does remind me a little bit about like when I used to go out. Like it's similar to the kind of a get at like a Japanese restaurant, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It's probably a different type of green tea.
Yeah, maybe picking up that rice flavor, hey? That kind of toastiness?
Yes, I'm picking that up probably more in this one, actually.
Huh. You know, a couple notes is that when I'm drinking and this is an organic selection as well, and one of the ways that they bring about interesting flavors is by what they do to the soil. So one of the big reasons why there's such a big difference in flavor in this tea and more of a common or a standard Japanese green is that they're not putting in a whole lot of nitrogen into the soil, and so it's not going to achieve a similar result. But of course, also the fact that it's a seed cultivar instead of a clonal one. But another thing is also again, what they're putting into the soil. So these guys, one of the things that they put in is a special type of bacteria. And they don't want me to go into the details of the soil structure that they're using because it's kind of like they're like, just guard that, we'll tell you.
Maybe.
But what's interesting is that that what they're using pulls nitrogen out of the air and affixes it to the roots of the plant, which is a pretty common tool that farmers have been using for a long time, even if they weren't aware that they were doing it. And so it's just, farmers are going to experiment with different, leaves that they can compost and put into the roots. They're going to experiment with different bacteria. There's a lot of different things that a farmer can do to bring out interesting flavors. So it really is all in the soil, right? That's going to make a huge difference. And what's also an interesting point is just how similar I taste that. This tea has kind of opened me up to understanding organic green teas in general. I've always just assumed that organic green tea from Japan is of inferior quality. I don't feel that way about, say, vegetables or like lettuce that I'm buying at the supermarket. I often find I get more flavor out of an organic lettuce than I do out of an non-organic lettuce, but I haven't been able to find amazing organic Japanese greens. And I think that what this tea is encouraging me to do is just to think differently about what I'm trying to achieve in terms of what kinds of flavors I'm trying to taste, if that makes sense. Right? So it's... Now, that being said, this is definitely the most complex organic Japanese green that I've ever had. A lot of Japanese greens, when I taste them, perhaps because I'm making them like a standard Sencha, taste very harsh, to put it bluntly. And I don't know quite what to do. One way that I've been able to pull out some really interesting flavors in a standard organic Japanese Sencha is to drop the temperature down significantly to 40 degrees centigrade. But I don't know how realistic that is for most. to do that when they're brewing at home, right? Like, especially if you're doing this vessel transfer system, 40 degrees centigrade is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But,
I have a quick question.
what's up?
Jeremy, are you feeling any kind of sensations, like health sensations? Like for me, I'm feeling a little bit like my sinuses are opening, interestingly.
No. I mean, every time I drink really good quality tea, especially the Japanese like senchas and matcha, I always feel good after, but not like so stark.
Yeah, like a little bit buzzy or something. I feel like
Yeah.
I feel just like nourished. And there's
Yeah.
something that not that I had like any sinus problems, but I just feel this kind of opening of my sinuses. I don't know if
Just
it's
the
even
flavors. There's just so many flavors. They're just
yeah.
You know, I whenever I have a green tea, it always just makes me, and this is definitely predominant with steamed greens. I do end up feeling a little bit more chill, and I have always attributed that to the L-theanine, because the L-theanine is a tranquilizer.
yeah.
And so even though there's caffeine in your green teas, the reason why you don't get addicted to green tea is that presence of that L-theanine. And it's why Zen Buddhist monks would drink matcha before meditation, and still do to this day in many cases, is for that effect, right? That effect of not necessarily being sleepy, but of being just feeling really like there's a sensation of relaxedness that comes about, for sure.
I feel that. I feel a bit meditative.
Yeah, for sure. I've already brewed the third steep, where I'm working on it. Do you guys want to make that happen as well on your end? So I'm doing 5 minutes for the second steep called for 5 minutes. Third steep calls for 6 minutes. Okay, so 5 minutes 30. You know, for our viewers who are gonna bring some of our teas home, we always, on the front of the package, have our suggested brewing parameters. They're just right there. I don't know if you can see it in this little window. But for example, this one says 6 grams, 180 mils, 70 degrees centigrade, 3 minutes 45 seconds. And what that's going to do is just give you a starting point. So when you're brewing and you find that perhaps your region or your personal preference finds the tea a little bit too astringent, you could experiment with lower water temperature. If you find it too strong, you could experiment with dropping the dose down a little bit. If you find it too weak, you could experiment with either a hotter temperature or longer brew time. I find for me, when I don't have any starting parameters to work with at all, that it's just not a very generally, it's not a very good tea when I haven't had it before and I'm brewing it for the first time with no experience. And I just need to play around with brewing parameters until I find a ratio, a temperature, a brew time that's going to bring out flavors that are interesting. So, interesting again, it's all in the eye of the beholder. So for us, we definitely want to taste. We want it to smell good. We want it to roll over the tongue with some texture. We want some nice flavors. We want a nice finish. And then we also put a lot of stock into what we often refer to as the fourth pulse, which is after you finish drinking it, there's a wave of flavor that crests and comes back and makes you really excited about the tea. Okay, so we're at 3 minutes 40 seconds for me on mine. Again, a lot more going on with this tea when it's wet. There's a theory that we were introduced to by an oolong specialist in Seattle, and she was convinced that tea that creates little bubbles as it's brewing, that's a surefire sign that it's been sprayed with pesticides. And I was really concerned after I heard that. I felt like there was no way that was true. But, you know, there's a lot of interesting information that gets thrown around, and it's good to have some sort of, traditional knowledge to me is extremely important, but I am also interested in what science has to say. Anyways, on an anecdotal level, there's at least in my teapot, a lot of bubbles appearing as I'm brewing this, and I know for a fact that this is not sprayed. It's actually kind of
Yep, I
funny.
have bubbles too.
You got bubbles too, right? I think it has more to do with nitrogen release than anything else.
Or maybe the water that you're brewing with too.
I think so, but what I have noticed is that those bubbles they don't appear when the tea is old. That's, again, totally anecdotal. But when I have a stale tea and I go to brew it, I don't see that. So I don't know what is causing it. It's interesting to look into. Yeah.
I figured out what I did last time. Instead of 3 vessel transfers, I did 2.
That would do it. So you were brewing with closer to 85 degrees centigrade. Because start at 95, 85, 75. So you're probably a little too hot. Yeah.
So is this a 6-minute brew, Jared?
Well, the second steep was supposed to be a 5-minute brew, and I did 4 minutes. So
yeah, I definitely did 4 minutes.
And I felt like that was an interesting flavor. Now, I haven't been able. I'm just so used to teas being ridiculously harsh when I oversteep, and I haven't been experiencing that so much. We have another version of this exact tea. It's this Kocha Zairaishu. It's a crimson tea that we made with the Kawakamis. And this one, again, I can brew for sometimes 6-7 minutes, which is generally way too long. And it's supposed to bring out so much harshness, but I don't taste that. And I can only peg that on the fact that it's a Zairaishu, that's an heirloom cultivar, that it's just not... Yeah, so I feel pretty good about this. I don't think that the 6-minute brew is going to be hurting this one. And I'm interested to taste this tea again, actually following the instructions that I've written here. Because, I when I'm making the tea instructions, I am going to be in a certain mental state, and I'm going to be tasting different flavors. And then when I go down and I taste them, and then I put them on the tin, sometimes I come back to the same tea a few months later, and I'm tasting different things. And there's a number of reasons why that might be. Why my instructions might not be accurate 3 months in. Could be that the tea leaf size is different. Maybe our packing team, we didn't distribute the larger and the more fragmented leaves equally between pouches. We really try to do that, though. Like, we try very hard to make sure that there's an even distribution there. I could be myself. Maybe when I'm brewing, I didn't do the gentle flip, and so I'm working with mostly large leaves in the beginning, and then I get more fragmented leaves at the end. Another reason is the leaves might just have developed different flavors because they've been resting, and they're just going to taste different, period, close to a year from harvest than when I'm closer to harvest, which makes a lot more sense to me than anything. Yeah. So anyway, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I have high hopes that this isn't going to be overly astringent.
Jared, I'm going for a 20-minute steep. Just so you know, I'm going off the deep end.
Okay.
You can't stop me.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, let's
Can I ask you?
I'm actually very interested in how that would taste.
Yeah, I have a quick question, unless it's going to get in the way of the.
Go ahead.
Just thinking about tea